Ofcom, the broadcast regulator, has opened an investigation into the BBC over their Gaza documentary called How to Survive a War Zone. And a spokesperson from the regulator says, having examined the BBC's findings, we are launching an investigation under our rule, which states that factual programmes must not materially mislead its audience. Quick reaction for you, Chris Hope, on this. It is a significant story. The BBC has been through a string of scandals recently. Gaza, of course, topping the list before that. Still right now, Greg Wallace is under the cosh. Bob Villan, Glastonbury, death to the IDF. That chant that went around the world caused huge scandal. Strictly Come Dancing, Hugh Edwards, the list goes on. This latest one, very significant.
Yes, getting more so. The ability to look after themselves has been removed by Ofcom. They have the right to investigate. They're doing so. It seems to me the net is closing in on senior management there. Number 10 tell us today the BBC must learn and take swift action, Martin, from the corporation's findings. That's before Ofcom announced its inquiry. On the issue of Greg Wallace, Number 10 said it welcomes the decision to sever ties with him, and it must take action to restore and deal with this issue of breaches of trust. And it's on Tim Davies' future, because all roads go back to him. Number 10 said they have confidence in the chair and its board, and that follows their confidence in Tim Davie, the Director General. But it does seem to me that there's a crisis emerging rapidly at the corporation. It is.
Well, let's get our next guest on board now. That's the Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, Gideon Falter. Gideon, thanks for your patience, and please welcome to the show. Your reaction to this astonishing breaking news story. You've been outspoken in the extreme, saying Tim Davie, simply, you believe now, must go.
He absolutely has to go. And I think that's very, very clear. It's why Ofcom must be stepping in now, because up until now, Ofcom has looked at this and they've said, well, the government says that unlike all other broadcasters with the BBC, we have to give them special treatment. We have to wait for the BBC to carry out its own investigations before Ofcom can step in. So Ofcom's been sitting and waiting, saying, let's see what the BBC does. Now the BBC has released this report, the timing of which, by the way, is very suspect. They released their report on Greg Wallace just before they released this Gaza report, almost as though they were trying to bury the Gaza report under the professional corpse, as it were, of Greg Wallace's career, and just try and sort of issue two reports at the same time, hoping one of them doesn't get noticed. The report itself from the BBC is shocking. It says things like that they don't think that it has any bearing on impartiality, that they had the son of a Hamas official, a senior top Hamas official, narrate this documentary. They don't think that that had any impact on impartiality. So the report itself is completely weaselly. It's trying to exonerate the BBC. And now Ofcom has had a look at it. They've had a chance to digest it. And they've said, no, not good enough. We're launching our own investigation.
Have you had a random call lately from a strange number, maybe trying to sell you something or even scam you? If so, your info could be out there. That's because of data brokers, shady companies that scrape the internet for your personal details and sell them to marketers or even scammers. These days, scammers can even use AI to mimic your friends' voices and trick you into sending money. It's not just annoying. Data brokers often target vulnerable people with high-interest loans or sketchy offers. But there is a solution. Incogni, the sponsor of this video. Incogni contacts data brokers on your behalf and requests your info be deleted from their databases. And because your data can keep popping up, Incogni keeps sending removal requests to make sure it stays gone. They've just launched a new unlimited plan with custom removals. If you find your info on a weird website, just send them the link and their privacy team will work to get it taken down. Getting started is easy. Hit the link in the description, create your account and let Incogni handle the rest. It's risk-free for 30 days and you'll get 60% off an annual plan with the code GBNews. Take back control of your data with Incogni.
And Gideon Falter, I wonder if this points to a feeling of imperviousness, of invulnerability, the fact that BBC in many ways seems to feel and act as though it's above broadcasting law. And beyond that, Gideon Falter, a sense of a culture within the BBC. Lest we forget, former BBC top brass Gary Lineker publicly threw his weight behind this documentary.
Well, absolutely right. And this is Gary Lineker, who had to leave the BBC under a cloud after he posted that video, which claimed to explain Zionism with a picture of a rat, which, doesn't need an awful lot of explanation. You don't have to go very far back in history to find people portraying Jews as rats. And then you've got, as you were just listing before, all these other scandals, one atop another. And you just have to ask yourself, the BBC in this report accepts that it sent money to the family of a Hamas official. And they're trying to say the response to that has to be, we're going to update some guidelines somewhere. Imagine any other institution, taxpayer funded, that sent money to the family of a prescribed terrorist organization. And at the end of it, they say no one's going to lose their job. The senior people at the top, who not only have done this, but also presided over the Gary Lineker debacle, the Glastonbury debacle, and many others, those people are not going to be threatened at all. We're just going to change our guidelines. It's absolutely an attitude and a culture of unaccountability. And worse than that, there is this bias now which has been fueling hatred and division in this country for a very long time. And Ofcom, what we've been calling for is for Ofcom and an external investigation to come in. That's now happening. The BBC, just like these other self-righteous organisations that you find throughout time, including, for example, the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn, they need that cleansing power to come from outside in order to root out the anti-Semitism. And what we're actually hoping is that Lisa Nandy, who's been very strong on this, the Culture Secretary, is going to come in, and she's also going to say, this is absolutely not good enough. Tim Davie needs to go. There are others also in the top brass at the BBC who reviewed this documentary and stood by it. They need to go as well. And we're actually holding, on the 7th of September, we're now holding Britain's March Against Anti-Semitism. And we're actually now, as a result of this, in discussion with the police about bringing that march past the BBC, because over 90% of British Jews now consider that our national broadcasters' coverage on issues relating to Jews is unfavourable. And this report just absolutely does nothing to shore up anybody's confidence in the BBC to fix that.
I have to say, Gideon Falter, absolutely, it's just incredible that we're even having this conversation, that British Jews feel afraid in our country. It brings great shame, I believe, on our entire nation. Gideon Falter, the Chief Executive of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, thank you very much for joining us. Now, very quickly, Chris Hope, you've got breaking news for us.
MPs have called the BBC bosses to give evidence in a hearing in Parliament in September. Tim Davie, the Director General, Samir Shah, the Chairman, in public grilling on issues of Greg Wallace, Bob Villan and the Gaza documentary. A real moment, I think, for their future, possibly, certainly focusing on that, were their actions in September.
There'll be a huge conversation around the Royal Charter, around the fact that BBC is paid for by licence payers. Huge breaking story. Thank you very much, Chris Hope. Now we've got to